Welcome to the PooCast podcast with your hosts,
Browne
and Pickering. G'day and thanks for joining us again on the PooCast podcast. I'm Brian Pickering.
I'm Jocelyn Watts.
and I'm Kaye Browne. Great to have you with us again.
Now look, if you've been watching our video versions of the PooCast, you'll notice the difference this week is we've gone back to a podcast with pictures. Why? Well, Jossie and Kaye both missed their hair appointments.
What?
Well, you did, didn't you? And I haven't had a shave for a while.
Yeah, right. The real reason is both BP and I are under the pump, as they say, with some of our other work with veterinarians, that pays the rent, and Jossie's Jocelyn Magazine is starting to take off and keeping her occupied. So while we'll continue to record PooCast stories, we might not have as much video each time.
Yeah, well, it's a bit of a relief for all of us, I think. Thanks, KB.
For yourself.
Well, this week we're going to jump right into the deep end and share with you some funny dunny stories. Well, no one is perfect, are they? Are you? And if you are, what's your secret? We'd like to know.
Yeah, send the info directly to Brian. Sadly, most of us, particularly we girls, have at some time or other had to deal with some embarrassing moments when it comes to needing to go to the loo, but not always at the best of times. We'll get to those stories soon.
Oh, good. I can't wait.
Yeah, well, that's what this is all about, right?
Also this week, with winter now upon us, it says many of us will put on a few kilos in the cooler months, and we wondered why.
Well, I have. Have you noticed?
Nobody noticed.
So we thought we'd ask dietitian Caitlyn Henderson from Healthy Lifestyles Australia for some tips on what not to do in the cooler months.
Oh, yeah, well, plus, have you ever had a Squitty kitty? Well-known feline vet Dr. Kendall explains the ins and outs of a cat's diet and why they either do or don't do number twos the way we expect them to. Meantime, let's get into the PooCast podcast news with Kaye Browne. Oh, and we've made a brand new intro just for you.
Thanks. We're going to do things a little bit differently with PooCast podcast news from now on. It's going to be more interactive with input from Jossie and Brian about things that float your boat. Speaking of floaters, are you a floater or a sinker? And no, I'm not talking about your fishing tackle. A new study has found whether your poo floats or sinks depends on the types of bacteria in your gut and how much gas they produce. Okay, so it's not your usual dinner table conversation. Who's brave enough here to say what they consider their normal poo, floater or sinker, or maybe a combination?
Let's start off with Jossie.
It turns out I'm a sinker, but I'm not saying why.
Look at you. You've actually caught me off guard there a little bit.
You're more fun that way.
Sometimes they're floaters, sometimes they're sinkers. You know?
Combination. Well, you're about to find out why. Because there is no right or wrong answer to this, because everyone is different. But the reason we now have this groundbreaking information about why we produce what we do is thanks to scientists at the Mayo Clinic, who were trying to replicate in a more sciencey way the results of two gastroenterologists way back in the 70s who depressurized a floater. I don't want to tell you how they did it, resulting in it sinking. This indicated to them and other experts that floaters aren't produced by excess fat, as previously thought, but extra gas byproducts from the gut microbe. Fast forward to the Mayo study, which used mice to test the theory. Researchers concluded even mice stools float because of gas from gut microbes, not from swallowed air or other sources. In fact, the specific bacteria, Bacteroides ovatus and Bacteroides uniformis, are also the reason methane is produced.
Okay.
And the frequency of flatulence in certain people.
Right.
So if I'm actually, it turns out that I'm a sinker, does that mean I'm lacking in gas? Is it?
Well, from the other day when we were in the car, right? Anyway.
No, it's to do with the gas produced by your microbes, and they might be doing a very good job, but we're not quite sure yet because they're still looking into it. And, what a great thing. Bye, dear, I'm off to work, playing with poo again today.
Great job.
Research is definitely fascinating, given the current focus is on things like poo transplants. So keep tuning in for updates.
Yeah. As I said, great job.
Oh, gosh. All right, moving on. Have you heard about the blue zones?
Yes.
Good?
Yes.
No.
No? Oh, well, you're about to. More and more attention is being paid to countries dotted around the Mediterranean where people seem to be able to avoid a lot of disease and, in fact, outlive much younger people in Western countries. The latest research from decades of studies of people living well into their hundreds in the subtropical island of Okinawa in Japan has highlighted some of the key reasons they live so long. They're happy, they're very social with lots of really good friends and family, but they don't live too close to them. They don't worry about time. Things might be a little late, but they'll eventually happen.
It sounds like you.
So, no stress. That is very, very important. They don't retire, per se.
Just like us.
Whatever they did, they still do, but more slowly. And they have a sense of purpose. And the very, very latest research shows that Okinawans have more of a specific gene called the stress resilience FOXO3A, which is linked to longevity. Now, you and I might have just one copy of FOXO3A from your mum or dad, and then you'll have 2 to 3 chances of living to 100. The Okinawans, of course, have more of FOXO3A, so they're very much more likely. Plus, lastly, they do eat about 1 kilo of fresh fruit, vegetables and legumes a day. That's every day.
That sounds a lot, doesn't it? That's amazing. 1 kilo. I mean, it's all very well to have an apple or, banana and a few other things, but 1 kilo.
That's a lot of fresh food.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, they don't actually have bread very much. They have sweet potato, which is lower carb and lower GI.
I do love my sweet potato, as you know.
Yes, and I do too. They also enjoy alcohol in moderation, and I'm sure all 3 of us do.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. By the way, my glass is empty, sorry.
Now, what I want to know is, are they testing whether these centenarians have floaters or sinkers? We call that fibre.
Yeah.
And lastly, in our last story, a quick tip to reap the benefits of eating more seafood without having to pay an arm and a leg for it. Apparently, we should be eating smaller fish. Harvard medical studies show we should adopt the Mediterranean way of eating more sardines, herring, mackerel and anchovies instead of farmed salmon and tuna. Sure, the big fish are still healthy, but they cost a lot more, as we know. Plus, they eat smaller fish, so that concentrates any contaminants like mercury or PCBs. Harvard's only other suggestion on this topic was to eat more bivalves, that is, clams, mussels, and Jossie's favourite,
Oysters! You love oysters, don't you?
Us.
Why don't you like oysters?
Yeah, well, it's a texture thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't have a great liking for swallowing snot.
Okay. Next.
well, I don't know, a lot of toddlers find snot quite appealing. I've seen fingers up noses a fair bit.
Yeah.
Anyways, we will keep you up to date. If you have a particular topic you would like us to chase up for you, get in touch via our links. I'm sure you can find them. Brian will put them somewhere. I have no idea how it happens, but he does all that stuff.
Okay, thanks, KB. Brilliant stuff. Jossie, what do you got for us?
Well, we've had some great feedback about our resident APD. That's short for Accredited Practicing Dietitian, who is Caitlyn Henderson from Healthy Lifestyles Australia.
Yep.
She's definitely not like the fun police of years gone by when eating healthy meant saying no to everything except rabbit food.
Which I actually like, as it happens. But anyway.
Well, I know you like it, things like lettuce and celery sticks, but you have to say that it's effective. But boring.
Yeah, it's all right with a glass of wine, though, eh?
Anyway, and of course, rabbit lovers do know that even bunnies should be eating real bunny food, not lettuce.
Okay. Fortunately for all of us, Caitlyn's nutritional expertise means we can stay fit and healthy and enjoy great food, which is pretty good for all of us.
Absolutely, yeah. But look, with winter like around us right now, we're noticing many more people are worried about how they'll cope with things like when they're stuck at home with a fridge full of food and Uber deliveries only a phone call away. What do you reckon?
Where's the chocolate in the fridge, Brian?
I don't know. You hit it.
You asked me to do that anyway.
Kaye managed to momentarily put Caitlyn on the spot recently with this question.
Are there particular foods that are good for helping us when we're feeling stressed, or a lot of friends and family have been in lockdown? How do you get rid of the blues? How do you prepare for winter, I guess, build up your immunity?
That's a big question.
I'm sorry, we didn't warn you.
That's okay. So how do we prepare for winter? And I guess what you're saying is the non-hungry eating, the boredom eating, and prevent that. What I really like to try and get a lot of my clients and patients to do is really tune into their physical belly hunger. So what your body is physically telling you rather than what your brain is telling you to do. Because particularly in winter, when we've got everything all shut up and we don't really want to go outside too much, it limits us to the house or in the caravan or wherever we are indoors to keep warm, which is obviously very close to the fridge and the pantry. And that's where we can tend to do a little bit more grazing. Also, when we're cold, we tend to go for more carbohydrate foods as well. So I guess you don't want to have too many of the discretionary tempting foods in the house, because if you've got to choose between a chocolate bar, your favorite chocolate bar that's in the house, or a tub of yogurt, you might not always choose the chocolate bar. So sort of setting yourself up to not have too many of the tempting foods in the house, but also stocking it full of all of those whole foods. So then when you do become physically hungry, you're able to nourish your body with what it needs and what it's telling you it needs at that time. However, if it's a bit of boredom hunger, we need to go through some mindful eating techniques.
Such as?
That includes, you'd have to come and see me. There's so many. But
Here we go. Yeah.
something just as simple as stopping and assessing what your stomach, your physical organ, is doing in your body. So whether it is grumbling or whether it is just sitting there doing not much, or whether it's feeling particularly full, just tuning into what your stomach is doing.
This is mind over matter. It's the mind over the tummy.
is.
The tummy's the matter, and the mind, needs to be mind over matter.
Well, matter might like another name, basically.
I don't know at the moment. No. It doesn't matter.
Okay, so it's not just about physical things. People think it's a matter of willpower or won't power, but it's actually our brain. So you work with people on their brains.
Yeah, in a way, yes, I guess I do. A bit of nutrition counselling. But it can be really, really interesting once we start just stepping back a second and saying, well, what is my body physically telling me versus what I think I should be doing? It's 3:00 in the afternoon. I should be eating afternoon tea. I'm not physically hungry. Do I or don't I? So it's kind of just asking all of those questions and navigating through that to get the right answer.
Cool. So is there somewhere on your website that people can go and access that information?
Not on our website, because it's very individualized, and it's sort of something that you have to delve through and look at a few different factors as well. So I guess if you're interested in learning more about mindful eating, the best thing to do would be to come and see a dietitian to delve into it a little bit more.
Alrighty. Thanks, Caitlyn.
Thank you again so much.
Great. No worries. We'll talk soon.
So Caitlyn Henderson has always got some great things to say for us, and on our behalf, etc., etc. And if you want to check out Caitlyn, she's pretty cute, I reckon. But,
Trust you to know.
Yeah. Just go to healthylifestylesaustralia.com.au and search for Caitlyn, and you'll see what she's like, as along with all the other accredited practicing dietitians. All right, now moving on. We are really going to get to the bottom of things right now. There were some recent posts on BuzzFeed.com about diarrhea horror stories. So for a bit of fun, we would also like to see if anyone can relate. We'd love to see your comments in our Facebook page. So, look, we thought we'd read a couple of these out to you. KB, did you want to start?
Absolutely, and I have to say, this is not about me personally, even though I'll be saying I. It's not I. It's actually about a lady, and I'm going to call her Sophia, as in Sophia Diarrhoea.
Okay.
This one is about an exploding toilet. Sophia says, I was on a flight and had to use the bathroom. 5 days' worth of spicy Costa Rican food came shooting out of me, filling the toilet nearly to the brim. Now, if you look at most airplane toilets, there's a picture telling you to close the lid prior to flushing.
Oh, no.
I did not heed this warning. I flushed and suddenly found myself covered in diarrhea. It was as if a bomb had exploded in the bowl. There was diarrhea on the ceiling, on every wall, and all over me. I did my best to clean up, but nothing could hide the smell when I got back to my seats.
Can you imagine that?
I think American toilets are really scary too. I remember the first time going to the States and the first stop at the first motel, and aside from the water going the other way in the bowl, their toilet bowls, they actually fill up with water.
Yeah, which kind of almost like, whoa.
Stop.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, oh my God, it's going to overflow. So I can sort of feel Sophia's pain there a little bit.
Yeah. Well, this next story is, again, it's not about me, but it's talking about a blocked drain. If you've ever had a blocked drain, it's very similar to the one you were just talking about in America there. Blocked drains can cause all sorts of problems, right? So this post says, I was staying at my new boyfriend's place and I really had to poop, so I did what any girl would. I pretended to shower so I could do the deed in peace. His toilet was literally broken and I couldn't hold it in, so I had to shit in the shower. He kept asking through the door if I was okay, so I kept insisting I didn't feel well and was letting the water run over me. But I was actually trying to shove the poop down his shower drain. It was a disaster. Joss, it's okay to laugh. You can laugh.
Gotta go, you gotta go.
Exactly. Exactly.
There's one of those classic memes that goes around on Facebook and other social media where some girl has a date with a hot prospect and goes to his place and falls asleep. We won't say they're doing anything else. And then the guy goes off to work in the morning. That's him ringing now, and he doesn't know that, in fact, the girl that was staying ended up having to go to the loo, but couldn't find any loo paper, and she'd done quite a big one. The toilet wouldn't flush, so she put it in a plastic bag. And being a nice, kind person, made sure the toilet looked clean before she left, and left the bag handy right beside the door before going out. But she turned around after closing the front door, only to discover, to her horror, that she had left the bag with the poop in it inside. It's one of those gags that goes around on the internet.
What else have we got here, Josie?
Well, I have another story too, but again, it's not me and my mother. However, it goes something like this. My family and I were stuck in bumper-to-bumper traffic. I had eaten at Denny's diner that morning, and all of a sudden, I didn't feel right. We were in a residential area, so there was no bathroom in sight, and I saw a house for sale and scrambled to the backyard where I had the worst diarrhoea of my life.
Oh, no.
My mother later joined me, as she's had the same breakfast plate as
No.
As I was relieving myself, a realtor came out back and asked what I thought of the property.
Oh my God, a real estate agent.
Yeah.
It's obviously an American story, that one.
Yeah.
Would never happen here. Hopefully.
Exactly. Yeah, look, there's some crazy stories there. Thanks to BuzzFeed.com for those stories, and very useful. And keep all that kind of information coming,
So to speak. So.
Alrighty, so there you go. So there are people that really can't eat certain foods for various reasons, whether they don't like it, whether it upsets their tummy, and, you know, yucky. It's a bit like that. Who is it doesn't like oysters?
I know, it's crazy.
Like, how could you? How could you?
You know, I started out eating cooked oysters because the texture changes a lot, and I really like them. And then I progressed finally to raw ones. I still don't eat a lot of raw ones.
Yeah.
Tastes like snot.
I don't want to ask how you know.
Okay, moving right along. Now, have you got a Squitty kitty? Yep, that's a cat that basically has less than perfect number twos. But why? We humans and our feline and canine friends all react differently to what we eat on a regular basis. So, long-time friend and well-known feline veterinarian from the Chatswood Cat Palace in Sydney, Dr. Kim Kendall joins us to explain a bit more about Squitty kitties.
Dr. Kim, looking into cats' nether regions is something you do on a regular basis. How common is it for cats to have problems related to their nutritional intake?
I don't see that much problem with nutritional intake. It's not my area, but there is a lot of cats with inflammatory bowel disease. And my personal theory is that the intake that they've got a problem with is actually the pollutant contaminants that we're surrounded with now, because they lick that off their coat. So a lot more cats are getting fur balls. And once a cat starts vomiting, it brings the bugs from the lower bowel to the upper bowel, and then they react to those. They become allergic to those bacteria, and that sets in train inflammatory bowel disease. The problem then being that the body thinks it can't be just, hair and contaminants, so it starts to react against individual proteins. So you end up on this search for protein that doesn't cause a problem. And in my experience, you can get a cat right with inflammatory bowel disease on, you can find a protein it doesn't react to, but eventually it will react to that one as well. It's an internal derangement, if you like. That cat I showed you also has inflammatory bowel disease. About 50% of ragdolls do, and they often lead on to lymphomas. So if you can get it right, you can extend the time before the gut gets cancerous.
Wow, that's incredible. I guess there are similarities between cats and humans. And now that I think about it, we're all surrounded by contaminants. So what is the solution? Because our cats, we like to have them close to us. And so I guess we're all experiencing the contaminants, except we don't lick ourselves.
We don't. Yeah, we only drink it, in the water, because it doesn't get. I start to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but you can't. They now talk about forever chemicals that are in people. They did a study to see how many people had one particular THP or something. And to see if it was affecting anything. And the problem was there was no one that didn't have it. So they didn't have a control group. So some people are more affected by it and have higher levels of it, but there's no control group. So I think humans are starting to enter the chain that the cats have had. So what do you do about? Well, we spend a lot of time washing cats. The stuff's nasty, and they're talking about what's in a wildfire and how toxic is all that. So mostly that'll show up as vomiting. One of the areas that I developed a significant amount of expertise in, as it were, was Squitty kitties. We used to home out cats and kittens, and in fact we homed out 5,000 of them over a period of about 18 years. And I could tell by the smell what trees that they needed. Now, I'm not sure that that's a skill that can be passed on or that anybody wants passed on.
I think so. No one wants to send their kitty straight to the kitty litter tray. As long as they actually make it to the tray, it's probably a good thing. But Squitty kitties, and this is common.
Oh, 80-90% of kittens, and if it's not addressed properly, I used to think cats could grow out of it, but in fact they can't. And I've treated cats 2-3 years old the owners have heroically put up with leaky bums and having to wipe their bums, and stinky poos that clear the room, and it's no fun for the cat either, because they do feel obliged to tidy up down there. Here's an interesting factoid. I did once ask, how come dogs, with their sensitive noses and taste, how could they lick their own bums? And apparently they can switch their smell off, so they can lick a bum and eat horse poo, cow poo or whatever. They can switch it off. So cats must do the same as well in order to be able to tidy up. So interesting you say that poo and pee are related, because I've had a couple of cats where inflammatory bowel disease was actually the cause of their peeing outside the tray. Now, peeing outside the tray, we've discussed before, is always a message, never a mistake. And it was just because the whole pelvic area was inflamed, and so they were just looking for relief, and they pee outside. Once we fixed up the inflammatory bowel disease, they went back to peeing in the tray.
Mm. You mentioned before you don't sort of necessarily concentrate on nutrition and all the rest of it, but obviously you know something about it. Little things like giving a cat milk or giving a cat human food. What are some of the no-nos with all that?
I prefer to recommend cream. It's low lactose anyway. Much better. Cats can digest fat a lot better. Yogurt's always a good thing. We should all be eating yogurt. Probiotics have now been developed specifically for cats and dogs. my nutritional intervention in terms of Squitty kitties as well, because as they see them all ages, and it can be complex to track down the parasites. There are some good tests, but if the test is negative, interestingly, it doesn't mean the cat doesn't have it. Cats are a bit like that. If it's positive, then you know which direction you're going. And there are 7 things that cause Squitty kitties if you send a sample off to the lab for what's called a PCR test, and a polymerase chain reaction. And this one little kitten had all 7. So my only nutritional test is if you've got a cat with soft poos, feed them chicken and yogurt for 3 days. And if the poo's still stinky and soft, then you've got a colon irritant or small bowel irritant that's creating the problem. And so we can then start to look for parasites and that sort of stuff, because chicken and yogurt is essentially 100% digested. I mean, the yogurt's low lactose. It's called lactobacillus for that reason. And so that's the only diagnostic test I do. If they've still got soft poos after 3 days of chicken and yogurt, then worthwhile grabbing a sample and sending it off, or starting some of the diagnostic treatments, because of course lab tests are not cheap. So sometimes it's easier to trial a treatment rather than look for something that may, negative doesn't mean it isn't there. So
That's complicated. And for cats that actually are outdoors, I guess it's and hide their poos, it's a bit hard to monitor what their output is. Are there any other telltale signs that, do they bite and lick
they're farty.
themselves? Oh,
They're farty. Some of them will rub their bums and leave a skid mark. But mostly if you've got a problem, they'll be farty. So if they're a totally outdoor cat, you'll never know. I have had outdoor cats that have been in hospital and, demonstrated the problem. You've got to differentiate that from cats who when they're worried. But it tends to, if they're in hospital and not moving much and they've got soft poos, then you've got an issue that you need to look into. So yes, outdoor cats, but outdoor cats are not the ones that get brought to the vet. And also I think that up until 25 years ago, cats were fed really rubbish. I mean, the old Friskies was all, you might have to take the old dry foods were terrible. They were just awful. And of course, the cats would go and catch mice and rabbits and things. We forget it. Yeah, and possums. I think there are micronutrients in mice, and I really think until we start, there's a mouse plague. How come we can't capture them and put them through nitrogen, liquid nitrogen, and they come out like little divers, and then you can put them in a sardine tin? That's my solution to nutrition. Until we do that, we're missing the micronutrients.
wow. Mouse in a can. Who'd have thought it?
Yeah. I've talked to the big companies, and one of them did actually put little mouse flavored tidbits in one of their dry food, but it didn't take off. They called it mouse flavored. I don't know if they were actually mice or not. And nobody knows how much fiber there is in a mouse coat, soluble versus insoluble. So we still don't know the answer to what's the perfect fiber combination for cats.
Well, maybe the people that provide the food for pet snakes, because they can get humanely raised and prepared mice for their snakes. So maybe people could get them for their cats.
I have had one client do that. They're about $3 per small rat, and the only correlation between good teeth and what you feed them is feeding rats. That's from old studies, but it's actually the chewing action, and chicken bones and things don't really do it. It has to be rats for some reason and go to woe. So because your teeth, and here I am being a heretic again, but you're either born with good teeth or you're not. It depends on your genetics and your mother, how your mother was fed. So all this fannying about with special diets and dentals and stuff. Experience, it does not work. Brushing cats' teeth doesn't work. I'm waiting for the actual evidence, and I can't get any of the dentists to show me any evidence that brushing a cat's teeth or scaling or polishing every year does any good at all. So anyway, I'm still out there in the I'm not quite on this planet, but, there we go.
Yeah. You have a good long-time reputation as being someone who speaks their mind, which is fantastic.
I ran into a problem with my sister-in-law, because she didn't realize that I do actually say what I think, as long as it's true. I forget how to fib.
Yep,
Right.
that's not such a bad thing. Dr. Kim Kendall from Cat Palace in Sydney, thank you so much for being with us on the PooCast podcast.
I'm always interested in the variations on a theme that cats provide.
Well, it looks like that's the end of this week's PooCast podcast.
Really?
Yeah, ep number 6. Thank you very much for joining us for all this time. And I hope you don't mind not seeing us, 100% in the video. But as soon as I lose a bit of weight, I'll get back on there and do it, and I'll show you my six-pack.
We'll get them a few oysters. They don't have enough calories.
Thanks for joining us. I'm Brian Pickering.
I'm Jocelyn Watts.
And I'm Kaye Browne. And thank you.
And if you want to see more and listen to more of our podcast, just go to poocast.com.au.
Thanks for joining us today on the PooCast podcast. If you like what we do, please share. And remember, our stories are for general information only. Make sure you always seek advice from your registered health professional. And thanks again for listening.